Hello and welcome to the All Podcast with your girl Kubi Springer. Today I am sitting down with Adeyemi.
The same energy that makes the homeless man is the same energy that makes the billionaire. And so a lot of men who are chasing success, they actually run in from pain rather than running towards the expression and the effulgence of their soul. The masculine is the container. The masculine is what holds structure, the force and the voraciousness of the feminine essence and the beauty that can be in it. So the stronger the container, the stronger the beauty, the stronger the force.
How are you, my dolls?
Kubi, amazing to be here.
It is so good to have you here. First of all, this is your first time at all, right?
It is.
How long have you been in Dubai?
3 months now.
3 months.
But it's beautiful here. Wow.
Yeah, it's super cool. What does this make you feel?
Serene. There's just an energy of being in the epitome of man-made creation. And there's a sereneness into that.
I get that. Your work is fascinating. There are very few people who I will see on the internet have an internet conversation and then be like, come on the pod.
Thank you.
I want to deep dive into the work that you do, which is all about supporting men. I watched a fascinating interview with a gentleman who was extremely successful in the UK, sold his business for X amount, and then became very destructive.
Yes.
That interview for me really sold me into the work that you do and why it's important. So let's start there. Men who are successful, who are struggling despite the success, why do you think that's happening?
I think a lot of men are living their life with some sort of a mask on, right? And the general thing is when a man goes to chase success, he makes success his entire thing in his life. But what a lot of men don't realize, and what a lot of people don't realize, it's 80% of the entrepreneurs have gone through adversity in their life, some level of trauma. Now, the same energy that makes the homeless man is the same energy that makes the billionaire. And so what happens when you see a man chasing success, typically it's a response into the trauma, a response to the adversity that says, I have been hurt, something has happened in my life, I never want to feel that pain again, and success is going to help me get away from feeling that pain again. Now, what you saw in the interview that I had was that man had a lot of success, made it, felt like he was getting away from the adversity and the trauma or whatever he went through. But as soon as he sold his business, realized that the emptiness was still there. So his entire life and he sold his business for $800 million. His entire life was made in some ways as a response to trauma, a response to adversity. And so he built a shell around his life. But deep down, there was pain. And so a lot of men who are chasing success, they actually run in from pain rather than running towards the expression and the effulgence of their soul. And so my work is about saying, hey, instead of you running away from pain and building a life that's designed to help you run away from something, can we actually identify the core thing that you want to feel, which typically is connection, and can we go create a life that gets you the thing that you actually want? Instead of a bypass journey that you hope will get you there, but it's actually running from the truth, which is the connection and the love that you want.
I want to lean in on that because a lot of people would say, myself included, that the pain was the fuel.
Yes.
If I take my own story as an example, being told as an 11-year-old dancer, you're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z because of the color of your skin. Everything has thus fueled me to say, as a woman, as a black woman, as a dark-skinned black woman, and all women around the world, unapologetically stand in your spotlight. So some would say that pain is a necessary fuel, and then there becomes a point where it is like a weight. Do you agree with that it can be a necessary fuel?
100%.
Okay.
The best way to look at this, right, is a SpaceX rocket looking to go into orbit. The first part of the fuel source for a rocket is designed to get it into orbit. But it's extremely critical for that rocket to remove and to release that initial canister of fuel. And so the first fuel, the response to adversity, is your soul coming into life and saying, hey, I can actually master material reality. Extremely required. But when you get to orbit, to end up blasting off into the life of freedom and flow that you want, you must let go of that initial fuel source. And that's where a lot of people struggle, because they get addicted to the fuel source that get them to orbit. They want to go further, but they can't. And so that becomes the weight that starts pulling them down. It is extremely important at that point to let go and then go on a deeper journey, because now you need a smaller pack of fuel to get you into space, and it's required for you to let go of that initial fusels.
I love that analogy. I love that analogy so much, because you're absolutely right. As it goes off, you see it, they release, and then it can shoot further because there's less weight on it. I love that. The $1 million question for me then would be, when you're working with men, how? These are men who have built, like you said, billions, millions off of that fuel, off of that identity, off of that strategy. How do you get them to start to release?
The first thing is to, just like you talked about, right? You have to recognize the importance of that fuel. You have to recognize that a man that has built his life, $800 million to get to this point, went through a lot. This is someone that responded to life, showed up valiantly, fought and won in some ways. Now he might not be winning in the same way again, but you have to first recognize that and help the man see that, amazing, you've gotten here. Now you're at orbit. There's a much farther journey ahead of you. There's a deeper sense of peace and connection that you want. Do you now have the same courage, super important, the same courage that you used to fight through life to get to where you are, to actually let go? Because that becomes the scariest thing. Now they can't let go because they have to get into the void when they let go. When the rocket initially removes the initial canister, it gets into a liminal space where the new fuel is firing, the old one is leaving. That's this in between that actually forces a man to get connected back into his heart. That's actually one of the most dangerous parts for a man on this journey.
Why is it dangerous?
It's scary. It's scary for him because the same patterns, the pain, whatever is there, starts to show up again. But the way I work with men is to say, hey, you've gotten here, recognize them first of all, make them understand that it's extremely powerful, and then give them the courage to actually go chase the life and the connection that they want. Because that's why they did it all in the first place.
That's why they did it. You have mentioned on many of your content and your interviews the importance of a brotherhood during that process.
Yes.
Why is that so important?
When a man has succeeded, when he has pushed through, one of the things that's missing in society is that for these men, they typically don't have a brotherhood. You saw this with my interview with a guy who sold his business for 800 million. He didn't have a brotherhood around him. And so when his life started to open up and he started to go through this void and this liminal space and the pain started to come up, he didn't have other people to look up to who had been down the journey. And so what a man needs in this space is to see other men who have achieved a lot, gone through the same space, faced the pain and come out on the other side. They now need a new compass. They need a new North Star. And so they need to be surrounded by men that can hold them in that journey, but also men that they can trust to fully let go. I'll give you one more thing. When a man is going through this transition, he has to in some ways drop the armor, drop the thing that has helped him succeed, drop his masculine, and step into a deeply feminine and vulnerable place. But when he's done with the journey, he needs to be able to stand as a man again. Only men can hold that space for men.
My brain has gone to 5 questions all at the same time. Okay, let's go. I can hear the women who are watching say, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a niece, I'm a grandma. Why can't the women do that for him?
A woman can typically provide nurturing for a man. When a man is going through his journey, typically he needs challenge. He needs challenge and initiation. That comes from other men. There's a way I can lovingly hold a man to a higher standard of being on how he needs to show up for his wife, his kids, his family, that a woman just can't. A woman would typically provide the nurturing space to allow him in his journey, but a man would have the ability to love him so deeply that he calls out a higher version of his being out into the world. It makes him wake up in the face of death to say, hey, you have to go through this because what you're actually looking for is life. And we have a limited amount of life in front of us. So can you step back up into a higher version of yourself, right? A woman can't do that for a man. The men just have a way of piercing through and saying, brother, I see you. I see the pain. I see it. But there's something else for you on the other side. Now, the reason I chose to bring that on camera is because we had multiple conversations behind the scenes, but I realized that it's extremely important for us to have the real conversation. The loudest men in the room typically are the ones that have been driving the narrative of what it means to be a man. That makes it very tough for me to be a man, right? Because you have men who deeply narcissistic, extremely dangerous to women, and you can see that in the podcast and all the things that were shared, and they purport that as the standard of masculinity. They're the loudest people in the room. And so when I met him, I went, hey, I actually don't think we should continue this narrative as is because it's disconnected. It's a hidden, like on the podcast, he had a very light, open expression, but deep down was deep-rooted narcissism. I grew up with this with my father. This deep-rooted narcissism. It hurts everybody. And at some point, you need to be able to call these individuals out and say, let's have an honest conversation. I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm not interested in put together scripted conversations. I want the raw essence. Let's have the true conversation. If we don't do that, we'll have a bunch of Andrew Tates running around the world where there's no connection into heart. It's just a bunch of egos. And I think it's time for us now to start switching the narrative and understand that there are amazing men behind the scenes that are actually dealing with the fallout of the unintegrated masculine running the show in the world. And it's time for us to have that conversation.
For you, I want to say two things. One, I thought it was really brave of you because I read the comments and I was like, wow, this is a make or break career moment.
Sure.
But I actually felt it was important and I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed the call out. And so I applaud you for that publicly. I actually thought it was really, really brave. You mentioned your dad. Is your dad the reason why you do the work now?
In many ways, I love my father. My father is someone that he went through some of the toughest things imaginable in life to be who he was. And he was able to, I was born in Nigeria, he was able to become one of the top individuals in the Nigerian space. Now, on top of that, he has his own struggles. He has his own sense of narcissism, and there are many aspects of himself that he had to go through. And so a bunch of what I do with Reborn, with my programs, with Other Side, is saying, for a man as powerful as my father, who was in the leading aspects of leading areas of Nigeria, working with presidents and these individuals, what kind of space would that man need if he wanted to go deeper into his journey? He's going to need a space with strong men, a space with individuals who are already successful, a space with people who can challenge him and hold him from a place of love and tension. And so I realized that that's what's missing in the world. There's no space to challenge men, to say, hey, you've built an $800 million business. Let's actually ask the real question. That aside, are you in alignment? What's happening with your kids? Are you dealing out of love? Are you okay? Can we talk about it? And so Other Side came as a manifestation of that, of there are a bunch of strong men. And if you look at the spiritual world right now, there's this thing of being the light, almost weak masculine that's hugging trees and running. And that's a lot of that is BS. Right? A lot of that is BS.
What if they just want to hug trees?
Sure, let them enjoy that, but it doesn't move or change the world. It doesn't create. I want a space where men who are creative, who are extremely ambitious, who are leaders in the world, can drop into their heart and start operating from a deeper sense of consciousness and from a deeper level of vibration. That's what my father needed. And so I love him enough, and I love myself as the second iteration expression of him to create that for the world. Because that's what he needed. And I love him enough for that. We argue back and forth. I'm one of the kids in his family.
Is he receptive of this?
He is in many ways. I'm one of the only kids who can, because of how dominant he is, I'm the one who can argue with him for 2 hours. We can go on arguments for 3 months and be in love and tussle and back and forth. But that's in many ways where I learned how to deal with men like that. To say, hey, not true. Let's get into alignment. And yes, you're going to go all over the place, and it's not gonna be nice. Your hubris is, but let's love you deeply into truth. And the funny thing is, when I started doing that with my father, because that was my first challenge, of course, he started to drop into a deeper sense of enjoyment with life. He started to connect deeper with the kids. We started to have an actual conversation. And I started to find the deeper things that had programmed him in his life. And I was able to love the little boy of my father, right? And go into this alchemical process of loving my father's inner child as the child loving him.
And what did that do for your own inner child?
It gave me a lot of safety. And even apart from safety, it gave me a lot of wholeness to realize that in some ways I had incarnated and come into life to be this expression. And it allowed me to go from being the child seeking the love and the approval of my father to actually being able to give a gift to my father. And from that point to be able to give a gift to men in the world. And this is one thing I think a lot of men miss, especially the ones who have dominant fathers, is that you can give your father a gift that he was never given, that his father was never able to give him, right? And so if you can spot specifically what that is and hold space for him, then you get to give your gift, and you almost complete the cycle of father and child in a really interesting, dynamic way.
The work you're doing is so necessary.
Thank you.
It's so necessary because as you're talking, there are myriad of men that are coming to mind for me. So I want to applaud you on that. I am getting the wrap-up side, even though I could be here with a mocktail for another hour having this discussion. So I want to leave with one question before we go to quick fires.
Sure.
I know you don't set goals, because I've watched your content. You don't believe in goal setting.
Yep.
But what do you want your brand legacy to be?
I want to be the brand and the person that help men finally step into authenticity and to really accept all parts of themselves without questioning the effulgence of their soul. If I can connect them deeply into being, where they get to be plugged into the frequency of life and to feel how joyful life can be once you can actually let go, then I have won. That is the frequency I felt once in my life that completely shifted my entire trajectory. I got home, and for the first time, I felt presence, I felt aliveness, and I felt my heart just filled with so much love and gratitude for existence that the only thing I wanted to do was give. And so I realized that I had never had that before up until that point. And my goal is to help men identify and get to that point where they have that in their life, and they can live their life from that point so they can finally die complete, having fully expressed all of themselves into the world.
I love it. All right, quick fires. You ready?
Let's go.
Logic or intuition?
Intuition.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, for sure.
Morning meditation or nighttime reflection?
Nighttime reflection and meditation. Mornings for me are just rapid fire execution.
Why reflection and meditation at nighttime?
Because if you can reflect correctly, then you get to review your entire day and you can change the actual frequency that you show up with, because you take that into bed through something called the Delta Doorway, another conversation. But nighttime reflection allows you to create a space, get into meditation, almost reprogram your entire consciousness in bed. That's when you want to do it.
Love it. Strength or vulnerability?
Ooh, strength in vulnerability.
I knew you were going to say that. I thought you were going to say both.
No, strength in vulnerability.
Strength in vulnerability.
It takes strength to be vulnerable.
It does. A leap of faith or calculated risk?
Leap of faith. All day long.
All day long. I knew you were going to say that. And then lastly, joy as a guide or pain as a teacher?
Ooh, tough one. Joy as a guide or pain as a teacher? I would choose joy, but I must add that they're so connected. Because the heart that feels pain is the heart that can love. The amount of pain you can tolerate is the amount of love you can express, right? So you can't take away one part of the sinusoidal curve. They're super interconnected. So either way, I would actually probably choose pain more, because pain opens the door into love, and most men are actually running away from pain. So I would choose pain, because that tells you finally that, hey, there's a deeper joy that I want to experience, because you spread your spectrum of joy and pain and what you can experience. So I'll go pain. That opens the door into something bigger.
Adeyemi, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Oh,
amazing.
Loved it. Listen, I could have spoken to him for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours about this topic. I think it's important for us as women to connect with our brothers, our fathers, our granddaddies, our cousins, our best friends, and say to them, at least have the conversation. I hope this episode is a spark to something better. Until next time.